All right, so in this video, I'm going to now talk a little bit about part two of the assignment, which is the formatting, magazine layout, right? So how are we going to approach this? Here are some examples of images that were done in the past um, that uh, I'm just using as good examples of what I'd like to see from you. So you can see that there's two parts. There's the photo editing, which is the picture that you have just created, right? So what you're going to need is your original picture and then your picture that you added the changes to. So you're going to need both of them, and they would get placed into the page. And then what I would like to see, because I think that when you're working on creating visual art for people to view in a magazine and read, you want it to be appealing and engaging to the consumer, the person who's reading this. You want to make sure that they become engaged in what you're creating. So information also helps along with the visuals that you create. So what I was thinking was we can make it look like a magazine, put some sort of a header at the top that says, time to relax. Maybe I'll give you a few other examples. I'll look through some magazines and see what they might place up at the top for almost like a marker for the page. And then at the bottom, I would like it to be seen as if it's in a page in a magazine, right? So you would also need to include page number and then the magazine that you would um, place your design into, so you can be creative about that. And then I'm also going to later on get into, placement of your text and objects. Um, there's a lot that goes into where things should be placed and so forth, but that will be another day. We'll talk about that. I also want you to include information describing what you need to do, like double take, find the 6 things that make these two pictures different, right? Um, so something that's catchy that people can understand, right? And it makes sense and it goes along with your image. And then I also find that in magazines, when they have pictures, it's usually celebrities or famous athletes and so forth. Um, it kind of explains what's going on in the picture, right? So it's just not a picture. So it's also important to include information about what's going on in the picture. Make sure that it's readable, it's clear. This actually looks a little bit too light. It's kind of hard to see. I'm not sure if I would have placed it there or maybe on the other side of the picture, but I'm not here to critique this right now. The other thing that, so you can see that text information is important, and then also the shapes. So you can see that we created like a border or frame that is going around the image, and also shapes that are here to kind of bring you into the image as well. So again, just everything that kind of helps to allow this to come together. All right, so this is an example. Here's another example done by someone. I think that actually this one came out really nice. So, I had them all write the same thing. I might have us do something similar, but, using different effects or shapes that work with your image, different font styles that work with your image and so forth. And then here's another example that someone did in a previous class. And you can see each of them kind of put their own take to it, different font styles, different shapes, different lines, um, different magazines, and so forth. So we can have fun with this. So what I want to go over today with you, there's two parts. The first thing I want to go over with you is shapes and creating layer styles, right? So that would be like effects around the shape and so forth. So that's what I'm going to go over. And then I'm going to do another video that's font styles. All right, so different types of font styles. So what I want you to do in Photoshop is open up a new file. So you're going to go to File, New, and make sure you're working in inches. We'll just make it about 8.5 by 11, which would be like a standard size sheet of paper. And you want to make sure your resolution is at least at 120. If not, any more than that would be better. So I usually put mine at 300, but for this, that's a large file. So for now, we can keep it at 120. You never want it any much less than that, because your picture will become very, very pixelated. So I'm going to create my image. And what I want you to do is create 4 different shapes. You're going to do this as an activity. And you're going to recreate this and then upload it to your assignments. So under your shapes, your shape tool is located on your toolbar. All right. If you click on it, you hold down. It'll show you all different shapes. So you have a rectangle, a round rectangle, ellipse, polygonal, line tool, and a custom shape. So I'm going to start by just creating a rectangle. Okay. And you can see here that my properties comes up and it allows me to customize that rectangle. Right now it's not filled with a color, it's just outlined in red. I can also kind of change the outline if I wanted to. The number of dashes, let's see if I make it higher or if I make it lower, right? The gap between them will become more, right? So you can kind of adjust accordingly. You can kind of play around with the edge if you want it to be round, circular, so forth. But, I normally just go up to the top here where it has fill, custom. You can do all of that above here as well. So kind of keep that in mind. If I wanted to fill this with a color, I can, right? Now, it gives you all these options of colors, but you can also go to your color picker and customize it even further, right? And then it fills it with the color. You can take the outline away. You can add an outline. Let's see, maybe I want to make it yellow so you can see it. And then I can also change the width of the outline. I can make it really small. Whoops, can't really see it. Or I can make it really big. The stroke. So that's a fun way to kind of play around with shapes and create like frames or borders for some of your information. So I want you to create 4 shapes, 4 different colors, and then I'm going to start getting into layer style. So here's my first shape. All right, I'm going to create a ellipse. So with the ellipse, and even with the rectangle tool, it will allow you to create ellipses or ovals. But if you wanted to create a circle, you hold the shift key down and lock it in place, and it will lock it into a perfect circle. And the same thing with the rectangle. If you hold the shift key down and lock it in place, it will create a perfect square. So again, I just want to see that you're playing around with this, you're understanding how it works. 4 different shapes, 4 different colors and styles, right? So that'll be 1, 2. And then what I also want to, I'll do a polygonal, I guess. If you lock in place, it'll, again. Okay. And if I wanted to change the size of it once I have it, I can do Control T. And I can scale and change the size and also rotate that shape, hitting return or enter to place that shape. And in order, okay, so if you notice, I just use the move tool to move it. In order to change it again, you have to go back to the shape, and then you can see all of your information comes back up again. Okay, so I'm going to change this. Maybe I'm going to change the outline to blue. More options. Maybe I'll change the dashes and make it 1 and 1, right? Maybe I'm going to make it align outside. Let's see what happens on the outside edge, right? Versus inside. So there are a lot of options here for you. The last shape I wanted to show you was the custom shape. So custom shape, when you go to that, will allow you to customize any shapes. So you can see here that there's a whole array of different shapes that you can use. And you can use these, using these shapes would not be considered plagiarism. Photoshop is allowing you to use them. Right now I think I have all my shapes open, but if you go to this little icon that looks like a gear, you can open up all of them, or you can narrow them down. If you're just looking for arrows, all your arrows will come up, right? So let's see, talk bubbles, if you wanted to have a talk bubble, right? So I'm going to just, I guess I'll do a talk bubble right here. And I'm going to change the color of it. And maybe it's not going to have an outline on it. It's just going to be a shape. So now I have my 4 shapes, 4 different colors, 4 different styles, right? And you can see here on my layer bar, I have rectangle, ellipse, polygon, shape. So they're all coming up as separate layers on my layer bar. Now what I wanted to show you that I would like you to also add is some sort of an effect. So if I went to, right now I'm on my blue rectangle. So if I go to layer, layer style, I have a lot of different blending options. If I open up my blending options bar, you can see that I can bevel and emboss. I can add a stroke. A stroke is an outline, so you've already done that. You can add an inner shadow, inner glow, color overlay, pattern. I'm going to show you a few of them, and then you can kind of play around with them. And I'm not sure if Mr. Billy showed you this at all, but okay, so like for the first one, maybe I'll do a drop shadow. So when you click on it, don't check it off. That's not going to really help you in any way. What you want to do is select it. So notice when I check it off, it creates a drop shadow, but it doesn't really, whoops, sorry. Well, let me do this again. When I go to check it off, right, it creates a drop shadow around the actual box, but it doesn't allow you to see how you can customize it further on the right side. So what you want to do is select it so that you have your drop shadow options. Like you can lower the opacity of it, make it lighter. You can change the direction of it. You can play around with the distance of it if you want it further or closer. Spread would soften it, soften the edge, and well, it would bring it out more in size. Kind of softens it, I should say. Noise will add speckle, like little dots, almost like pixelate it, where no noise will keep it soft. Right, so that would be my like first effect. You can also change the color of the drop shadow if you wanted it to be a different color. And that's how drop shadow works. So I'm going to hit OK. So you can see that now my rectangle has that drop shadow effect underneath it. Okay, so now with the ellipse, I want you to try something else. So when I go to layer style, let me try, and you can also go to blending options or just pull it up from here. I'm going to do pattern overlay. I use this a lot on my artwork. I think it's pretty cool. What this does is it creates a pattern on top of your shape. Right now you can't really see it, but I'm going to play with the blend mode and just put it on normal. And now you can see that texture that's on top of it. And it changes it to that texture. But when you put it on multiply, it allows you to see the texture but keep the color. But I'm going to keep it on normal for now and just kind of show you. These are some of the textures that I have on mine. I can also scale it up and down and make the texture bigger or smaller. Those are not all the textures that I have. Again, this little icon that looks like a gear, if you click on it, I have all these different types of textures below. So I could change the texture of it to look like a watercolor paper or some sort of a surface. And I would do that a lot to my artwork. I mean, I do now, but when I was in grad school, I did a lot to my children's book illustrations. Right, so you can create cool textures. And then if you go to blend mode, you can see how it looks with that color. Um, or, you can kind of play around with all of these different blend modes. Kind of, it depends on which one you use. Some of them don't really work um, with different situations. The multiply works with this though. So that would be another layer style, right? So now I'm going to move on to the polygono and do a layer style. Maybe I'm going to try a gradient overlay. So what gradient overlay would do is add a gradient to it, right? You can lower the opacity. You can change it so it looks like the color that's underneath it. Or you can change the gradient altogether, the shape of it, if it's radial, angled, reflected. So I'm going to keep it maybe on radial. And then what you could do is also click on the gradient. So I clicked on that gradient and a bar came up with a color picker for different choices. Right now it's going from purple to orange. If I click on the bottom tabs, not the top ones, but the bottoms here, if I double click, a color picker will pop up and I can actually change that color. Those are two ugly colors together, but let's do that. And then the tab in the center will allow you to pull more blue into it or pull more pink into it. You can also add more tabs just by clicking on the bottom. I added a tab. Maybe I'm going to make this one. That looks awful. We'll do that. Okay. And I can move that, making it more pink and purple, right? Maybe pulling more blue into it. Right? So, so that's how that effect works. So you can see now I've got 3 different effects happening here. And then on the last one, what I was going to show you is bevel and emboss. So this will make it look like it's raised or it's set into or carved out of. So right now it's an inner bevel. If I pull the depth, you can see that it looks now like it's been carved out or resting inside the piece of paper. I can also have it look like it's going up. If I pull it more, not really doing it. Right. I can soften it. Go in, up, inner, outer, emboss. Right, so you can create really cool effects with this. You can see how someone might use this on like a website, right? So this would be an example of what I'd like to see from you. All right, so if you're done with your photo editing, I want you to start playing around with your shapes and your effects. I'm going to create an assignment right now where this is going to go and where you will post your finished and completed exercise.